What if I told you that the secret to becoming a millionaire was, simply giving up your $5 morning coffee? Now, what if I told you that advice is actually a mathematical illusion, like something designed to distract you from a broken economy?
Yeah, it really is the ultimate financial Rorschach test, isn't it? I mean, depending on who you ask, skipping that latte is either the absolute cornerstone of personal wealth or it's just this patronizing myth.
Right, exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. We know you're here because you want to gain a thorough understanding of a topic without, you know, drowning in a sea of information overload.
Totally.
And our mission today is to sift through a massive stack of sources. We've got best-selling financial books, behavioral economics analyses.
And some pretty heated critiques in there, too, on it.
Oh, definitely. All centered around one monumental, culturally pervasive concept, the latte factor.
Which is wild because it's a concept that has reached over 100 million people over the last couple of decades. Yet the friction around it, it only seems to be growing.
So true. So our mission is to uncover whether skipping that daily $5 coffee is actually the secret to becoming a millionaire, or if it's just a comforting financial myth. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the core narrative of David Bach's famous financial parable. Because he doesn't just hand you a spreadsheet, right?
Right. He uses a story. It's about this woman named Zoe. She's a 27-year-old associate editor for a travel magazine living in Brooklyn. And she works out of the Freedom Tower, which sounds super glamorous, but her actual day-to-day reality is, well, anything but.
Yeah, the irony of her life is just perfectly tragic. I mean, she edits a travel magazine, but she has literally never traveled outside of the U.S.
No, no, no.
Because she's totally bogged down by student loans, credit card debt, and just the general anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck in one of the most expensive cities on earth.
Exactly. She's essentially running on this financial treadmill.
Mm.
And the catalyst for her transformation happens during her morning routine at a place called Helena's Coffee. She ends up striking up a conversation with an elderly barista named Henry.
Okay, and what happens?
Well, Zoe finds herself staring at this large photograph hanging on the wall of the shop.
Oh, right, the picture of the Greek fishing village. In Mykonos at dawn, I think. And it's titled Yes, but the price tag is like
Yeah,
$1,200.
$1,200. Zoe looks at it and immediately just dismisses the idea of ever owning it
Yeah.
because to someone drowning in debt, a $1,200 photograph is a completely different universe.
Right, totally out of reach. But that is where Henry drops the paradigm shift that defines this entire philosophy. He looks at her and says, "You're richer than you think. If you can afford that daily latte you're holding, you can afford this photograph."
Which, on his face, sounds mathematically absurd.
Totally absurd. We're comparing a $5 paper cup to a $1,200 piece of art.
Exactly. But Henry is setting up the core thesis of the latte factor, which relies entirely on the mechanics of compound interest. I mean, Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the greatest mathematical discovery of all time.
Wow, Einstein. Really?
Supposedly, yeah. And when you look at the projections, you start to see why. Henry breaks down her morning routine. By noon, Zoe isn't just buying a coffee.
Right, she gets a latte, a pastry, a bottled water later, maybe a quick lunch.
Yeah, it adds up to nearly $30 a day. But Henry isolates just a $5 daily habit to make his point. If you redirect that $5 a day into an investment yielding a historical 10% return over 40 years,
Wait for it.
it blossoms into $948,611.
Let's actually look at the mechanics of that, because that is where people usually trip up. If you just put $5 a day into a glass jar under your bed for 40 years, you don't get $1 million.
No, not even close. You get about $73,000.
Right. The magic is in the compounding. The interest you earn starts earning its own interest. So your money is effectively going to work for you, cloning itself while you sleep.
It creates this exponential curve. For the first few years, the growth looks remarkably slow. But decades down the line, the snowball effect creates massive wealth from seemingly microscopic daily contributions.
It makes me think of a leaky tire. It's like believing your car needs a brand new engine because it won't drive properly, but you're actually just ignoring a tiny, slow leak in the tire. You don't need an engine overhaul, you just need to patch the leak.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You already have the air, or the money in this case. You're just letting it seep out invisibly.
Right, the money is already passing through your hands. Bach's framework is fundamentally about capturing what is already there. To do that, he outlines his 3 secrets to financial freedom. The first is pay yourself first. The second is make it automatic. And the third is live rich now.
Okay, I want to dig into that first one because pay yourself first is a phrase that gets thrown around in like almost every personal finance blog, but Bach attaches a very specific actionable metric to it, doesn't he? He calls it the 1 hour rule.
Yeah, it's a highly specific wage conversion trick. Because throwing out vague percentages, like telling someone to save 10 or 15% of their income, it often just confuses or intimidates people.
Yeah, totally.
Instead, Bach suggests saving the income from your exact first hour of work every single day.
So if I work a standard 8 hour day, taking that first hour means I'm saving 12.5% of my gross income.
Yes. And the philosophy dictates you do this before you pay your landlord, before the utility company gets their cut, and definitely before you buy a coffee. You basically have to treat yourself as the most important creditor in your life.
But hold on, I have to push back on this sequence of events. Human nature dictates that I need to look at my bills first. If I'm sitting down at the end of the month, I need to create a budget, add up my rent, groceries, insurance, and then whatever happens to be left over, that's what I save. How can I possibly save the money first if I haven't calculated what my life costs?
Well, you're touching on a massive point of contention here. What's fascinating here is David Bach intensely dislikes traditional budgets.
Wait, a financial guru who hates budgets? That feels like a massive contradiction.
I know, right? He fundamentally believes they do not work for the vast majority of human beings. He actually compares budgets to restrictive crash diets.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, people start them with incredible motivation. They create this complex spreadsheet, they track every single penny for 3 weeks, and then they just get exhausted. Willpower is a finite cognitive resource. When life gets stressful, the budget is the first thing abandoned.
Okay, I can absolutely relate to the spreadsheet burnout. So if we aren't tracking our expenses line by line, how are we supposed to enforce this 12.5% savings rate?
Through what one of his mentors called benign neglect.
Benign neglect.
Right. You remove human willpower completely from the equation by automating the entire process. You set up automatic transfers from your paycheck directly into your retirement and savings accounts before that money ever hits your checking account.
So you literally never see it.
Exactly. If you never see the cash, you never miss it. Your lifestyle simply adapts to the remaining 87.5% of your income.
Out of sight, out of mind. Which brings us to a phenomenon the sources call the big hat, no cattle syndrome.
Oh, yes. The story introduces a couple named Baron and Georgia. To the outside world, they are the absolute picture of success. They drive luxury cars, live in a gorgeous house, wear designer clothes. They have the proverbial big hat.
But behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors, they are drowning in debt and have zero actual assets.
Yeah.
They have no cattle.
And the reason that happens ties perfectly into why automation is so necessary. Without automation, you fall victim to lifestyle creep. It's the tide and the boat analogy.
Oh, right.
When the tide of your income rises, say you get a promotion or a new job, the boat of your expenses just floats right up with it. You suddenly feel like you deserve a nicer apartment or a better car. So even though you are making way more money, your savings rate stays at zero.
Because if you don't anchor that boat with an automated savings deduction, earning more money will never actually make you wealthy. It just makes you a more expensive consumer.
Wow, yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting. This connects directly to the broader societal misconceptions that hold people back. In the narrative, Zoe has a mentor figure, her boss Barbara, who breaks down 3 massive myths of money.
Right. The first myth is exactly what we just discussed, the belief that earning more makes you rich. The second myth is that it takes money to make money. People often think they need a massive lump sum of like $10,000 to start investing, completely ignoring the mathematical reality that $5 a day is enough to begin.
And the third myth.
The third myth, which is perhaps the most insidious, is the belief that someone else will take care of you.
Third myth hits a completely different register when you look at the demographic data provided in our sources. We tend to view financial advice as gender neutral, but the reality for women in this context is genuinely sobering.
It really is. The statistics cited in the materials reveal a stark imbalance. Roughly 80% of married men die married, but 80% of married women die widowed.
Wait, 80%? That completely reframes the conversation.
It means that the vast majority of women will end up managing their finances entirely alone at the end of their lives. Furthermore, the data shows that 4 out of 5 widows living in poverty were not actually poor until their husbands passed away.
If you've spent decades in a relationship culturally defaulting to letting a partner handle the big investments and the retirement planning, suddenly taking over a whole portfolio while grieving is terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
But if we look at the latte factor through that lens, it's not just a frugal tip about skipping Starbucks. Controlling a daily $5 habit is a low-stakes training ground for financial confidence. It's an accessible way to take ownership of your own security.
Yes. It shifts from being just financial advice to being an absolute imperative. You cannot safely delegate your financial survival to someone else.
So we've laid out the math, we've talked about the empowerment aspect and the behavioral tricks. It sounds airtight. But there is an entire faction of prominent financial experts who absolutely despise the latte factor.
Oh, they hate it. And their criticisms are very deeply grounded in both mathematics and macroeconomics. You have voices like Beth Kobliner or Helene Olin, who wrote the book Pound Foolish. They argue that the latte factor models are deeply flawed because they rely almost entirely on nominal dollars.
Let's break down what nominal dollars means in real terms, because this is a crucial blind spot. The latte factor tells you that you will have $1 million in 40 years, but it completely ignores inflation.
Exactly. $1 million 40 years from now will not have anywhere near the purchasing power of $1 million today. Think about what $1 million could buy in 1980.
Oh, you could buy a massive estate, luxury cars, live comfortably off the interest.
Right. Today, in many major cities, $1 million barely buys a standard two-bedroom condo.
So that $948,000 the barista promised Zoe isn't the lottery. Win the math makes it sound like. And the critics don't stop there.
No, they also point out that these simplified compounding models often ignore the massive erosion caused by capital gains taxes, income taxes on interest, and, frankly, the sheer volatility of real life.
Right.
The model assumes you perfectly invest $5 every single day for 40 years without a single interruption.
Which requires a completely frictionless existence. In reality, you lose your job, you have an unexpected medical emergency, your roof caves in, you inevitably have to raid those savings just to survive, which completely breaks the compounding curve.
And beyond the mathematical critiques, there is a massive systemic argument here, too. Critics argue that the latte factor is actually dangerous because it shifts the blame for systemic economic failures onto individual consumer behavior.
Oh, this instantly brings to mind the infamous Tim Gurner comment. He's the real estate tycoon who went viral for claiming that millennials can't afford homes because they're spending $19 on smashed avocado toast and $4 coffees.
Right. That comment perfectly encapsulates what critics hate about this philosophy. Millennials and Gen Z aren't broke because they occasionally buy coffee or avocados.
Right.
They are facing systemic wage stagnation, crippling student loan debt, and housing costs that have skyrocketed completely out of proportion to average incomes.
Let's actually look at the mechanism of why the latte factor fails against those systemic issues. If I save my $5 a day, I'm saving about $150 a month. That's $1,800 a year. But if I'm trying to buy a house and the starter homes in my area are inflating by $20,000 or $30,000 a year, my coffee savings are literally mathematically irrelevant.
Completely wiped out.
Focusing entirely on the latte factor feels a bit like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Sure, you are technically removing water, but you are completely ignoring the massive hole in the hull. A teaspoon won't save you if the broader economy is pulling you under.
It's an incredibly valid critique. And because of these fundamental flaws, alternative paradigms have emerged in the personal finance space. For instance, Ramit Sethi, author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, actively mocks the no latte advice. He preaches a big wins philosophy.
Right. His argument is essentially about return on energy. Don't agonize over a $5 coffee. Focus that exact same cognitive energy on negotiating a $10,000 salary increase or eliminating high-interest credit card debt.
Correct. And then you have Nick Magooly's concept, the 0.01% rule.
Ooh, I like this one.
Yeah, he argues that you should allow yourself to spend 0.01% of your net worth on any daily spur-of-the-moment purchase without an ounce of guilt. So if your net worth is $100,000, you can spend $10 a day on coffee and croissants guilt-free. The goal of this rule is to stop stressing over trivial expenses so you can focus on major wealth-building strategies.
This leaves us with a really fascinating contradiction. If the math is technically distorted by inflation and taxes, and the critics are absolutely right about the larger systemic economic issues, Well, why has the latte factor resonated with over 100 million people? Why does this specific metaphor survive every critique thrown at it?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it survives because it isn't actually about macroeconomics. It is perfectly engineered for our psychological reality. The latte factor leverages behavioral economics. Specifically, it targets a cognitive bias known as mental accounting.
Mental accounting is basically the way our brains categorize our money to justify how we spend it, right?
Yes, human beings tend to categorize small, daily $5 spends as petty cash. Because the individual transaction amount is so low, it completely bypasses the psychological pain we usually associate with handing over our money. We just don't feel a $5 loss.
And because we don't feel it, we completely miss the fact that this invisible habit equates to hundreds of dollars a month.
Exactly.
It's the leaky tire again. We don't notice the tiny hiss of air, but we wake up and the tire is flat anyway.
Exactly. And to combat that specific cognitive bias, the sources reveal a rapid mental math trick called the Rule of 752.
I found this concept incredibly revealing. Walk us through how the rule of 752 actually works in practice.
It is designed to act as an immediate behavioral deterrent. If you want to know what a weekly discretionary habit is actually costing your future self, you multiply that weekly spend by 752.
752.
Right. That number represents what that money would be worth in 10 years if you invested it at an average historical market return instead of spending it.
Wow. And we can apply this to so much more than just coffee. Let's look at modern conveniences. Say you have a habit of using food delivery apps a few times a week, and between the service fees, the delivery fees, the tip, you're spending an extra $25 a week just for the convenience of not picking up the food yourself. $25 times 752 is $18,800.
That's huge.
In 10 years, those delivery fees cost you nearly 19 grand. That completely shatters the petty cash illusion.
It really does. It forces you to confront the opportunity cost of your habits in real time. But behavioral economics also tells us that humans suffer from loss aversion.
Right, the psychological pain of losing something feels twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining something.
Exactly. So if you just tell someone to brutally cut out their coffee or delete their delivery apps, it feels like a painful sacrifice. It feels like deprivation.
And nobody wants to sign up for a life of deprivation. Which brings us to the third secret from Bach's framework, live rich now. How does he actually solve the loss aversion problem so people don't just give up?
By reframing the action through what he calls dream accounts. You don't just cut the coffee and send the money to a faceless retirement fund 40 years in the future. You set up automated accounts for your immediate, tangible dreams.
Oh, like Zoe does in the story. She sets up one account specifically to fund a photography class she's always wanted to take, and another account to take her dad on a trip to Alaska.
Yes, by doing that, you defeat loss aversion. You aren't sacrificing a coffee. You are actively purchasing your photography class. You are purchasing your freedom, your adventure, your peace of mind. You are aligning your daily spending with your actual core values.
It changes the entire narrative in your head. You aren't depriving yourself, you are empowering yourself. And to speak directly to you listening right now, it is entirely valid to want to be smart and efficient with your money. You don't want to feel like you are working incredibly hard just to tread water while the economy makes it harder to get ahead. The ultimate takeaway from navigating all these conflicting sources is that the latte factor is best viewed not as a literal, flawless financial master plan, but as a behavioral gateway.
Right. It acts as the training wheels for financial literacy.
It shifts your mindset. It takes you from feeling like a passive victim of your paycheck where money just happens to you and disappears into the ether to becoming an active owner of your capital. You start telling your money where to go rather than constantly wondering where it went.
And that psychological shift in identity is far more valuable than the $5 itself. It builds the fundamental discipline required to eventually tackle those major big wins the critics advocate for.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought, something to explore on your own as you go about your day, thinking about how you manage your own resources.
Think about the benign neglect strategy we discussed. If you actually followed that advice and you entirely automated your financial life tomorrow, your savings, your investments, your bills, all happening in the background without you lifting a finger, removing all of the daily stress and the cognitive load of budgeting, well, what would you actually do with all the mental energy and bandwidth you just freed up?
Yeah. What could you build or learn or experience if you weren't constantly staring down at your feet to manage every single penny?
A question worth answering, for sure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.